and is assisted by staff of the Community and Economic Development Department and the City Attorney's Office. The first meeting comprises the Historic Preservation Board agenda, where business of the board is handled, including recommendations of new historic designations. The second meeting consists of the Design Review Committee agenda and involves acting on recommendations from staff regarding certificate of review applications for major work proposed properties within the historic district's formerly abandoned buildings. The Design Review Committee is a standing subcommittee of the Historic Preservation Board. Public input is welcome for items on the Design Review Committee's agenda, and we would like everyone to participate to be heard. We ask that all speakers come up to the central podium and state their name and address for the record, and be concise in their comments. Thank you for your interest and participation. And please silence all mobile devices at this time. And with that, I will turn the meeting over to our board chair, Mr. Christmas.
Is your microphone on?
I just asked communication.
Yeah.
It is.
Here.
All right, thank you, Emily. At the March 23rd, 2023 meeting of the Historic Preservation Board is called to order, and our first item is roll call. Chris Olson, I'm here. Melinda Rinker.
Here.
Bruce Anderson. Lynn Dennis.
Here.
Landis Fleming.
Here.
Natalie Oldenkamp.
Here.
Cesar Perez. And Michael Porter.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum. Well, let's see, we need to review and approve previous month's meeting minutes.
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. No opposed? No, I thought I heard enough ayes out there. All right, no old business. New business. We have an announcement. Emily, do you make that, or you want me just to do that?
Yeah, oh, and my microphone is on. Sure, I can make that announcement. So our annual Historic Preservation Awards are coming up, and we are seeking nominations from the public. What we're looking for is any building project, restoration, rehabilitation project to a historic building within the city of Lakeland would be eligible for an award if that project has been completed within the last 3 years. We're also looking for compatible infill or new construction in the historic districts. That is also an award that we offer. And of course, the awards are a partnership between Historic Lakeland Incorporated and the Historic Preservation Board. And we should hopefully have a list of potential nominees for you next month. I did want to just mention that those nominations can be emailed to me at my email address. It's emily.foster@lakelandgov.net.
Very good, thank you, Emily. Do we have any other new business? Anyone wants to introduce? No? All right. All ready to adjourn, just like that. Voice? No, we need a voice vote of the board. All in favor of adjourn?
Aye.
Any opposed?
That's all mine.
It's all you.
Okay, we're going to call to order and determine the quorum here. First of all, myself, I'm present. Chris Olson.
Present.
Lynn Dennis. Here. Landis Fleming.
Here.
Natalie Oldenkamp. Here. Cesar Perez. And Michael Porter.
Here.
Okay. And we have a quorum. Okay. Are there any corrections to the meeting minutes from February 23, 2023?
Move for approval.
Second. I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion to approve. Let's see, we're going to review the administratively approved certificates of review from February 18th to March 15th. There are 20 cases. Take a moment and just verify if we've looked at those.
Emily, I only had one question. It was on number 4. It seemed like it said it was contributing and also non-contributing.
Let me look at that.
Yeah, the 735 East Main.
Mm-hmm.
Less of a question, I guess more of just a clerical.
I will have to look into that and get back to you. I'm not sure why there was a conflict there with the contributing, non-contributing status.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a HPV number there, so it's something that we went through before, apparently.
Yeah, this is actually, and the name is escaping me, the restaurant that recently had the fire.
Oh, Texas Cat.
Texas,
Cattle Company.
thank you.
Ah.
So I believe it is a non-contributing building. I don't know why we have it as contributing there. That might just be a typo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Page 10, 11, and 12 on here. Wow, 14 really had a lot. Okay, no other questions? Any other questions, anybody?
I have a question on the solar panels that are being installed on roofing. Do they realize that they have to be removed when they get a new roof? Because I know that that's been a problem in like home sales that have existing solar panels when you need a new roof. I just didn't know if these people were aware that the roof will not outlast those solar panels.
Yeah. That's something that we normally don't.
Yeah, that would be something
Talk
between the contractor that
Okay.
installs it, and hopefully they're dealing with a licensed contractor that makes a person aware of that when they install the
Okay, thank you.
solar panels. But that's a very important point, because I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That might be something we could put in whatever when,
I don't think that that would be appropriate for us to recommend that. Our purview is simply for the design
Okay.
of those solar panels and the location on the roof where they are appropriate. So, and our guidelines do cover that.
okay.
Thanks, Emily.
We are going to move into the public hearing portion of the meeting, and let's see, consider the certificate of review applications. Would our Deputy City Attorney, Ramona Siriani?
Yep, you got it.
Oh, yay.
Good morning,
Administer
everyone. Welcome to the Historic Preservation Board. If you're planning to speak before the board today, we'd ask that if you could at this time will stand, and I will swear you in if you're planning on speaking, as well as staff. If you can raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Our first case is HPB 23-032, 801 East Main Street. Final approval requested for the installation of an illuminated wall sign on the principal building of the subject property. Owner is 10 Cap Partners LLC. The applicant is Mr. Roger Snyder and Mr. Ryan Burt, Dixie Signs, Inc. Are there any conflicts of interest among the committee members? Okay, seeing none, Emily, would you read the staff recommendations, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The subject property is located at the southeast corner of East Main Street and South Lake Avenue, excuse me, and consists of a quarter-acre parcel that is located within Subdistrict 6 of the Garden District SPI, as well as the downtown Lakeland Community Redevelopment Area. The property contains a masonry vernacular building built in 1960 that originally functioned as a full-service gas station and repair garage. The existing building is considered non-contributing to the East Lake Morton Historic District. Undergoing renovations in 2014, this property and building has since been utilized for retail, entertainment, and eatery uses under the business name of The Poor Porker. A new business was established on the subject property in 2022 under the Unfiltered Lakeland name. This request proposes to install an internally lighted wall sign, 52.56 square feet, in size on the north elevation of the building on the subject property. The sign will consist of white acrylic letter faces covered in digitally printed and laminated vinyl in a burnt orange color, along with a black trim cap, and will state the name of the business. White LEDs will illuminate the sign internally. As the Historic Preservation Board's Design Review Committee is tasked with approval of internally lighted signs, this request was referred by staff to the Committee for Review and Approval. And this request was evaluated using standards and guidelines referenced here. The Design Review Committee previously approved an exposed neon sign on the west elevation wall for the Poor Porker. Staff finds that the design of the proposed sign is acceptable under the Dixieland guidelines, and the placement and scale of the sign on the upper portion of the building's north elevation wall is appropriate. The individual letter internal lighting source for this sign is found appropriate, as this type of illuminated sign was common excuse me, on many mid-century modern buildings, and is also found in the East Main Street district located near the subject property east of Bartow Road. However, the size of the sign is slightly too large according to the Dixieland guidelines and must be reduced to no more than 48.66 square feet based on the calculation provided in subsection 2A of the design guidelines. So staff recommends final approval of the request with the following condition to be reviewed and approved by staff prior to permitting. Number one, the wall sign must be reduced to a maximum of 48.66 square feet. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Did you say it's the Dixieland CRA commercial corridor design guidelines?
Yes, yes. So just to refresh everyone's memory, for commercial signage in what are typically residential historic districts, including East Lake Morton, we use the Dixieland CRA design guidelines just because our other set of design guidelines do not have specific sign standards.
Okay, I heard that and I thought,
That was an adopted policy of the board many years ago.
okay, thank you.
Good
Okay,
question.
is the applicant here today? If so, please come up. Oh, hey, come on up to the podium. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Folder, and the address of the business is 801 East Main Street.
Okay, do you have any evidence in support of what you've got going on here?
Dixie Signs has it.
Okay.
They've already reduced it on the plan.
And if you need to, you can pull that microphone down so it's a little
Okay.
easier. So you don't have to-
I'm short.
Yes, we reduced the height of the.
Speak into the
yeah,
microphone.
Sorry. Yeah, we reduced the height of the unfiltered sign. It is now 48 square feet, and I believe Emily said it was 48.6 is the maximum. So have copies if you guys would like to look at it, or
Is it the same design as
same
the
design.
original? Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
great.
Anybody want copies?
Okay, is there any public comment in support or opposition of the request from the audience?
And before we go on, sir, could you just state your name and address for the record?
Sorry, Ryan Burt from Dixie Signs.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, and are there any opponents to this? Okay. The committee members, do you have any questions for them?
I don't have a question in particular for the owner of the property, but having dealt with this somewhat before in my professional side of this, have we typically always, because I know that I think that we have in the past at the Lunds Group asked to not use the overall bounding box of the signage, because for example, this is two very distinct set of letters. And so the original that we have in here is taking the overall height of both of them together, which counts the unused portion below the first set of unfiltered and then Lakeland, and they would have been within their square footage requirement if we had subdivided it into those two separate letters. And so to me, I'm like, I actually, to begin, I was like, I kind of hoping that they stayed with it because it does line up very well with the sides of the garage door. So I was curious of what our stance has been with that, because that would allow them to have it and not exceed the gist, the meaning of the square footage requirements of not to exceed the proportions of the building.
Right, and I do believe, and Ramona, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe in the sign regulations in the land development code, it does measure only the word, outside of the bounding box, what you refer to as the bounding box. So it doesn't take into account that blank space, it just measures the words of the sign.
Yeah, because I don't remember the outcome, because I know I've had that conversation before at some point, and it's something that I would love to have revised, because it forces, because I mean, it's arbitrarily different at that point. I agree, it's still probably going to look very well, but it's just, to me, it's just a change of wording that would allow people to still fulfill the goals of that requirement to not be outsized compared to the wall that it's on, yet not penalizing them for having open space in their sign design.
Right. And I think the discrepancy comes in, the design guidelines don't make that distinction. So that's why we measured how.
Because I could also say just as easily, another method to have done this would have been to raise the Lakeland portion compared to the other, and you would have had a smaller bounding box.
Right.
Can you throw up an image of the
sure.
revised?
Yes.
Oh,
They
of
just
the
brought
revised.
in?
Yeah, I can. Did you have a graphic of the revised? Yeah, I can put that up.
I mean, there's what, 2 square feet of change?
Right. And what Michael said, that's exactly what we did. We just raised the script of Lakeland up to.
Oh, that's what you did? Okay, I thought you reduced the size of the lettering. Okay, then that's exactly the kind of thing I've done before.
Yeah.
It plays within the bounds of the exact wording of it. I think the wording should probably change so that they're not penalized for that, because they're well under if you don't consider the blank space in that, if you just consider the subdividing of the lettering, because especially if you have a completely rectangular backlit sign of you're not individually backlighting the letters, that totally would make sense too, to not do the overall if they had both of them like that. So it's something I've come up against professionally, and I think that you did the solution that I would have gone to. So awesome.
Would that be something we would do in the regular committee or the design review committee at a future?
Any amendments to be suggested to the design guidelines, you mean? That would be done at the board level.
At the board level, okay. Are there any other public comments from the committee? Questions, concerns from the audience? We're going to close the public comment section and move to committee discussion. Any other committee discussion?
I move for approval for staff recommendation.
I'd second that.
Okay. Any other? Nope. Okay, so let's see. Let me call for a roll call. All in favor, myself, or actually, we're going to do roll call. Myself.
Easy one.
Good morning. Need more coffee. Myself, approved. Chris Olson.
Approved.
Lynn Dennis.
Approved.
Landis Fleming.
4,
And Natalie Oldenkamp. Approved. Michael Porter.
4.
Okay, and that's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Come have coffee.
I'll be right over.
Okay. We'll get it.
Hard to read.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we are going to the next one, which is HPB 23-040, 506 West Park Street. No.
Sure about that?
Well, hold on. Yeah, I see that, but did I miss one? I probably missed one. Hold on one moment. Okay, we are 727 Jefferson Avenue. Do I have that in here? Yeah, I do. Good morning. Don't know why that didn't.
Maybe you do need the coffee.
I do need the coffee. I told you. I woke up very late.
Glenda, take a swig.
Take a swig. Okay, final approval requested for the new construction of a covered stoop onto the front elevation of the house on the subject property. Owner applicant John and Valerie Tutton. Is the applicant here?
The applicant's representative is here.
Representative, okay.
Sir, and I
That's
believe
right.
earlier, can I go ahead and swear you in?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the
Yes, I
truth?
do.
Thank you.
So help me God. I'm Leon Rebecca's with Green Construction Services.
Okay, and one moment, is there any conflict of interest with the board? Okay, and go ahead and yeah, Emily. Wow.
Thank you, Madam
You
Chair.
know what, the papers were stuck together, so I did find it. So Emily, would
I
you read
understand.
staff recommendations
Sure.
while I still wake up?
So the subject property is an interior lot consisting of .22 acres in the Biltmore Cumberland Historic District. And on this property is a one-story frame vernacular house built circa 1946, which is a contributing building in the Biltmore Cumberland Historic District. The one-story wood frame house features a side-gabled roof with a minimal front stoop, formerly covered by an awning that was destroyed by Hurricane Ian, and an attached carport. The house is clad in aluminum siding and has several replacement windows. The request proposes to remove the existing roof overhang and steps at the entrance of the home's front elevation and add a covered front stoop measuring 3 feet 4 inches deep by 10 feet 8 inches wide for a total square footage of 35.6 square feet. The new stoop will feature a gable front appearance with a 4/12 roof pitch supported by tapered columns on brick plinths. The stoop will have a raised foundation covered in cementitious finish and concrete steps. The applicant's reason for this request is threefold: to replace the damaged awning and provide additional cover, to provide for a safer landing for ingress and egress, and to resolve the front door leaks in the future that are currently occurring now. Materials to be used in the porch addition are as follows: a CMU foundation clad in cementitious finish and brick at base of columns. The gable end of the stoop will be covered in vinyl siding to match the house. Columns will consist of 4x4, so 4 inches by 4 inches, pressure-treated wood posts clad in fiberglass or PVC wrap. Steps will consist of formed and poured concrete. Fascia and soffit to be used will match that of the house, and roofing shingles will also match the house. The site plan submitted by the applicant shows building setbacks for the proposed new stoop that comply with the city's Land Development Code urban form standards. And this request was evaluated using the standards and guidelines referenced here. The Biltmore Cumberland Historic District exhibits a variety of architectural styles, including colonial revival, Tudor revival, minimal traditional, craftsman bungalow, Mediterranean revival, and frame vernacular. Entrance features for these houses are guided typically by the style and size of a house, and both minimal stoops and modest porches exist. While additions to the front of a contributing house are typically not recommended by the design guidelines, given the minimal traditional design of the subject house, the small footprint and simple design of the proposed stoop, as well as the reversibility of this alteration without damaging historic building material, staff finds the proposed front stoop addition to be consistent with the standards. The proposed stoop is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and will not adversely affect the integrity of the Biltmore Cumberland Historic District. For consistency with the design guidelines, staff recommends that fiber cement lap siding is used in the gable of the stoop, as vinyl and aluminum siding is prohibited by the guidelines. Additionally, staff recommends the use of tapered columns in the style and proportion of the columns supporting the carport in order to complement the existing architectural feature. So staff recommends final approval of the request with the following conditions to be reviewed and approved by staff prior to permitting. Number 1, use fiber cement lap siding with an exposure width similar to the lap siding on the house and the stoop gable. Number 2, use tapered columns in the style and proportion of the columns supporting the carport or porte cochere for the stoop columns. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, now let's move to you, and please state your name and address for the record, and then,
Leon Rebecca's, Green Construction Services, and we are at 3829 Progress Drive, Lakeland.
okay. Do you have evidence in support of the request? Any comments?
Well, I have our engineering plans and then our detailed scope of work that lists everything that we're gonna do, to create the project,
Okay,
which include what Emily had already recommended.
the changes?
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
And is there any public comment? Any for or opposed? Okay. Are there any committee members with any questions for public comment?
Okay, if we do this according to staff recommendation, are we doing it according to the 2 items or the 3 that's on the list that was sent out?
Yeah, there's 3 requirements for staff recommendation. There's 3, number 3 is a straight eave return should be used on the gable of the stoop. That was my question as well.
And that was my mistake. I believe I overlooked that. The staff report is correct. That didn't get translated into my presentation.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, and I have a question. I think in the other portion, it said that you were going to use the square with the PVC covering, so instead it would be the tapered and no PVC?
Yes, and they'll just be clad and then painted white.
Okay.
There, I mean, I don't know if Emily, if you put this on, it didn't turn out that well, but an example of that column that works with the carport. It's kind of shadowed.
Okay.
I mean, it shows it on the engineering forms, but it's just not quite as visible. But that's the column that's gonna rest on top of the brick.
What are we looking at?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very bad copy, I apologize.
Okay.
Do we have a picture? Do we have a picture of the other columns on
They're right there in the photo.
In the far back side of
They're
that.
way in the back.
Oh, way at the back. Okay, so it's vaguely tapered, not heavily tapered, yes?
Yeah, I mean,
Brick pattern.
I brought this because
yeah, it's totally done in the brick and it's more squatty.
Oh, it's brick,
see it
okay,
right
okay.
How short it is?
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yep. So build up that,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah.
So what I'll have our engineer do is raise the brick portion
Right.
so it matches.
Yeah, and it has.
Yeah, and
see
sir,
that?
if you're gonna speak, if you
Sorry.
could just come to the microphone, I'm sorry. We just can't hear.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
So what I'll have our SDR, our engineering company, do is actually raise the brick up to match the carport pillar. So then that column so they're symmetrical, is essentially what y'all want.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that is a distinct difference compared to some of the other columns that you get in other houses where they are essentially the same plinth height that you have shown on your drawings, but this house has that really tall and then a squatty brickwork.
Brick,
I
yeah.
don't, that's the technical term, squatty.
Squatty, yeah.
I assure you, I have an architecture license.
Any other questions? Okay.
I had one comment that I just want to say, I wouldn't make this a requirement. Please just don't throw those railings in a dumpster.
Oh, we're actually gonna repurpose them.
You're going to repurpose them? Excellent, because that's my own personal, I have a home that at some point did have the railings and they were too worn out. They're very expensive to replace at this point, and fabricating them also, someone custom is expensive. So I have some, I've actually, and they're hard to find in architectural salvage around here, and I have some that are waiting that I'm gonna someday pay someone to fabricate that. So it's just, don't get rid of those. Those ones are actually very interesting that they have the squares on them versus normally you see the typical ones you see now in aluminum railings where you have a circle on the top. So this is, it's distinct And I think that's definitely worth reusing and saving. It's unique.
And they're
Yeah.
in great condition, they look.
Yeah, they look like they're in very good condition.
Are the owners repurposing them, or?
No, we're gonna take them down and put them on the new porch.
Oh, perfect.
The other reason,
Excellent.
whoever poured the stoop originally pitched it towards the home,
Oh, okay, yeah, bad.
pitching it towards the sidewalk. So that's why they get water every time it rains, yes.
Sounds like a bathtub.
Well, this home is
They are good. and they're
4
very good
houses
condition.
down the street from me, and
And
I
you-
think
I can
it's
even
gonna
see
be
it in
a
the
great
bottom.
addition to it. But that was, calling out that column
Don't need code.
was the observation, all right.
And any other commentary for the public portion from the committee? Okay, we're going to move into the committee section. Any other questions or comments? Discussion?
Move for approval per staff recommendation.
Second?
Okay, and myself, 4, Chris Olson,
4.
Lynn Dennis,
4.
Landis Fleming,
4,
Natalie Oldenkamp,
4.
Michael Porter,
Or,
and you are approved.
Thank you.
So just for clarity, before we, submit for pulling permits, we'll just change the design to match the carport columns with basically put them in the dryer and shrink them.
Yeah, the elevation drawings that you submit with the building permit should
Yeah.
reflect the correct, those squatty, as Michael said, the squatty columns. Yes.
The squatty taper.
do your steps, you're gonna redo the steps, correct?
Yes, yeah,
You
we're
gonna
going
read-
that whole stoop and rebuilding.
Okay, so you're gonna do them according to code, and that up there's not according to code.
No, and then whoever did that was shoddy work on, and obviously the Tuttons aren't happy with it, because their home floods when every time you get it, even with the awning on, if the wind was blowing a certain way, water would come into their home, so, just not good work, so.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you very
you.
much. The next case we're going to hear is HPB 23-049, 506 West Park Street. Are there any conflicts with the committee? Seeing none, Emily, would you read the staff report, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The subject property is a platted lot in the Dixieland Historic District, which consists of .33 acres and has access to an improved alley at the rear of the lot. On the property are 2 buildings, a 1-story single-family residence built circa 1960 and a 2-story single-family residence built circa 1925. Both houses are built in the frame vernacular architectural style and are non-contributing buildings within the historic district. This request involves the 2-story house, which has a side gabled roof with triangular gable vents, a 2-story shed-roofed porch, and wood lap siding. It is believed that the subject building was an accessory structure historically, but from a land use standpoint, this building is legally non-conforming as a single-family residence. As the structure was viewed as an accessory structure, staff was able to review and approve demolition of this building, which approval occurred in August of 2020. The applicant decided to rehabilitate the structure instead of demolishing it, and therefore the interior of the structure has been gutted in preparation for rehab work, and all windows and doors have been removed. As the subject building has not been occupied or maintained for quite some time, the applicant requests to undertake a major rehabilitation and update all mechanical systems. Exterior work subject to design review includes the repair of the foundation and frame structure, installation of new siding, trim, casing, and corner boards, installation of new windows and doors, installation of a new porch/balcony columns, and installation of new roofing, fascia, and soffit. And, sorry, this is just a slide showing the floor plan. And I'll go back to that slide showing the elevation drawings that were included in your packet. So materials proposed for this request include concrete footer foundation, hardy board lap siding, trim, and casing, vinyl single hung sash windows, wood edge steel door with an upper light, asphalt shingle roof, hardy fascia and vented soffit, and the porch/balcony will have pressure-treated wood columns. The footprint of the house will remain the same as the existing, which is legally non-conforming in respect to building setbacks. A new concrete slab is proposed to be constructed along the east elevation of the house for a patio, and a 20 feet wide parking area off the alley with a sidewalk connecting to this feature to the front elevation of the house is also proposed. And this request was evaluated using the standards and guidelines referenced. So in evaluating the request with the standards and design guidelines, the following findings have been made by staff. Number one, the repair work proposed for the foundation and structure with in-kind materials is appropriate and consistent with the standards and guidelines. Number two, the replacement siding, trim, casing, roofing, fascia, and soffit with hardy materials are acceptable according to the design guidelines. Staff recommends that the existing triangular gable vents that have 90-degree lattice work be replicated in the gables of the east and west elevations. Number three, given that all existing doors and windows have been removed, the proposed replacement windows and doors are consistent in material and type with respect to the standards and design guidelines, as well as the frame vernacular architectural style of this building. Number four, the design and materials of the porch and balcony are consistent with the design guidelines and frame vernacular architectural style. And number five, the location of a paved 20 feet wide parking area at the rear of the property with access from the existing alley is appropriate and consistent with the design guidelines. Final approval of the request, staff recommends final approval of the request with the following conditions to be reviewed and approved at a staff level prior to permitting. Number one, replicate the design of the original triangular gable vents, including 90-degree lattice work in the gables of the east and west elevations. Number two, windows shall be recessed to provide a shadow line and not installed flush to the exterior wall surface. Windows must also include historically appropriate trim, including header, sill, and apron. And number three, hardy lap siding shall have an exposure of 6 inches or less. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is the applicant here today? And would you like to speak in regard to this? Please, if so, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Diego Paramo from Paramo Building and Roofing Service. Yeah, we can take care of all the requests from Emily.
Okay.
Yeah, it's no big deal.
Is there any other public comment? Anybody here? Any opposed? Okay, we'll call the public portion closed, and no further public comments. Does the committee have any questions for the applicant?
Maybe not for the applicant, but one thing at looking at this, do you know what the original home had above the porch? Because my concern is looking at the roof, that you're using a, you're calling it self-adhered membrane essentially over the porch portion because it's a low slope. I get that from a technical standpoint, but that's not really consistent with how old homes would have done it. That didn't exist back then. So I'm curious, what was there previously, and is that something that is consistent with our guidelines? And I guess that's towards Emily, because I kind of looked earlier and it's not really addressed in the guidelines. So I'm just, to me, it's just, I'd say it's not consistent with what they would have done when the home was originally built. And some of that is, I know, reality as well too, is back then, if it was low slope, they built up the building paper, and if it leaked, it was on a porch. They could see it real easily and they'd fix it right away. The reality now is we don't use the same materials. If you get plywood or OSB or something wet like that, you have much more of a problem than you do. So,
yeah, typically for a low slope roof like that, we would not recommend like a TPO type of membrane roofing. We would recommend one of the metal roofing panels that the committee allows. Given that this is at the back of the property and we have kind of...
it is high up, so it's not super going to be seen, especially since it's low slope.
Right.
So I was more curious because it's kind of, it seems a vague area in our guidelines.
Yeah. Historically, rolled roofing would have been used.
Yeah, because like I know my carport is just, it's a
Right.
5 feet panel that they just put over top of rafters and that was it.
Yep.
Any other committee discussion or questions? Okay. Let's go out of the public portion into the committee section here, and any other questions or concerns? And
Move for approval per staff recommendation.
Second?
okay, any further, okay, let's call for the motion first. Myself, approval. Chris Olson,
Approval.
Lynn Dennis,
For the motion.
Landis Fleming,
4,
Natalie Oldenkamp,
4?
Michael Porter,
Or,
and it is approved.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you for renovating and not demolishing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's quite the
Undertaking.
undertaking, yes.
Sure.
yes.
This is not. The next case is HPB 23-050, 914 South Missouri Avenue. Final approval requested for the installation of a new roof system on the two-story structure of the subject property. Owner is Mr. Gary Hyde, applicant Mr. Jordan Naples, Mark Brown Construction. Is there any conflict of interest among the committee members? Seeing none, Emily, would you read the staff report and recommendations, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The subject property consists of 2 interior lots and is .28 acres in area. An improved alley exists at the rear of this property, which is on the east side. A 2-story multi-family building in the Tudor Revival architectural style is located on this property, which was built circa 1932 and is considered a contributing building within the Dixieland Historic District. This building consists of a wood frame construction with a gable roof and gable dormers, brick and wood shingle wall cladding, and 6 light casement windows. The building has undergone several substantial additions and modifications since its original construction. A second 2-story house is also located on the subject property and is addressed as 912 South Missouri Avenue. This building is occupied as a residence, which is known as the Cottage. From approximately the mid-1930s until 1974, the subject property served as the Child's Garden of Learning, which was a private elementary school. The cottage served as classrooms for the school, while the subject building served as the primary residence of Matthew and Genevieve Mitchell. Mrs. Mitchell was the primary teacher at the school. Mr. Mitchell was a builder and made several modifications to the subject building in the 1950s. The former owner purchased the subject property in 1989, at which time the building was converted into 3 apartment units. On September 3rd, 2021, the building experienced a substantial fire, which was caused by an electrical malfunction. Due to the extent of the fire damage and threat to public safety and keeping the building secured, the previous owner received approval from the Design Review Committee to demolish this structure in December 2021. However, the building has not been demolished, and the new owner who purchased the property in November 2022 wishes to repair the structure. The applicant's request involves constructing a new roof in a gable design that will be different from the existing roof form, which exhibits several additions. The fire burned a hole through the existing roof deck and damaged the original rafters of the 2nd-story roof structure. The existing roof structure is composed of a mixture of gables with additions made over time consisting of a shed roof, low-pitched roof, and monosloping sections. The fire was contained inside of a wall cavity, and as a result, most of the floor joists, subfloor, and exterior walls appear satisfactory in condition. The proposed project would consist of demolishing the interior of the second story, bracing exterior walls, removing the deficient roof structure, installing pre-engineered roof trusses based on the proposed new roof design, and installing a standing seam metal roof system with red-colored panels. The new roof design will reflect a streamlined gable profile with an 8/12 pitch, incorporating the additions of the existing complex roof line. And this request was evaluated using the standards and guidelines referenced here. So staff finds that the changes to the roof line caused by several building additions since the 1950s have not acquired historic significance on their own, as they represent common construction methods and design. While the entire roofing system is proposed to be replaced, the new gabled profile with a steep 8/12 pitch is compatible with this building and its original cross-gabled roof structure, as well as consistent with the standards and design guidelines, as the building reflects mostly Tudor Revival architectural elements. However, to be consistent with the design guidelines regarding replacement roofing material, standing seam and 5V crimp metal roofing is not appropriate for the Tudor Revival style, and a shingle style roofing material should be used instead. So staff recommends final approval of the request with the following conditions to be reviewed and approved by staff prior to permitting. Number one, use straight eaves or classic eave returns instead of the quote-unquote pork chop style eave returns shown in the architectural plans. And number two, use shingle roofing, can be metal shingles, instead of standing seam metal roofing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is the applicant here, and would you like to say something in support of the request? Please state your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Jordan Napolis. I work for Mark Brown Construction. I'm here on behalf of Gary Hyde, the new building owner for 914 South New York, or excuse me, South Missouri. He also owns 944 South New York. I just wanted to express that, you know, his main goal is to restore this building as it was before. He wants to rent it out and, you know, kind of bring it back to its former glory. We've spent a lot of time and effort in trying to figure out a way to brace up these existing walls. You have a very tall chimney that we're going to have to brace up, in addition to coordinating with the neighbors in the area, because you have a courtyard in between the cottage and the main house. So it's been a challenge, but we've gotten our ducks in a row to get to this point. And so the biggest point that we'd like to stress is Gary, who is taking on this project and funding it. He's wanting to maximize his investment on this building. So in order to do so, he feels as if using that standing seam metal roof is going to be superior. In addition to that, he's older in age, so as time goes on, he's not looking for constantly having to maintenance this building, especially with it being, it's close to like 4,000 square feet between the two floors. So we're hoping that, you know, the board would consider using the standing seam metal roof panels versus the architectural shingles. Also, because the roof line itself, outside of standing in the courtyard area or, you know, maybe at the adjacent lot, it's not seen from the road. I don't know what the setback is from the road, but I would say it's at least 35, 40 feet off of that main drag there on Missouri Avenue. And then on the back side of the building that butts up to the alleyway, all you see is the second story terrace that they have over the garage. So majority of the roof line will not be visible unless you're up close to the house. So to be able to compromise, you know, he would want to paint these standing seam panels red to give it some color instead of it looking like the unfinished standing seam metal roof that you'd see on like a craftsman style house. But that's what we would like to do for the entire roof. And of course the low slope section will address that with, you know, roll roofing or what have you. But majority of the roof we would like to use is standing seam metal panels. So that's it.
Okay. And are there any other public comments from the public who is not here? And any opponents? Okay. The committee members, do they wish to ask the applicant any questions?
I'd like to ask Emily one. What is the objection to the tin roof?
The
Does somebody just not like it, or is there a,
No, the objection is based on a strict interpretation of the board's metal roofing policy, which doesn't include the Tudor Revival architectural style as a style that's eligible to receive a metal roof, essentially. There's several architectural styles listed that can have a metal roof, but Tudor Revival is not one of them. And I will say that this home is, while it's classified as a Tudor Revival structure on our Florida Master Site File form, it's a very loose interpretation of Tudor Revival. It is not a classic Tudor Revival home. So anyway, going back to the metal roofing policy, that it was staff's strict interpretation of that policy that led me to my recommendation. But the committee can decide as it wishes.
I'm on the same page as Landis is with this one.
Yeah.
If it were strictly a Tudor structure, a pure Tudor structure that we were dealing with, hands down, say. It's like that.
Is there perhaps a compromise? Because they do make products now that are metal roofs where they essentially, they glue on the granules to it to make it look like a shingled roof, but it's actually formed and made, it's metal, and it's formed and made and look like the shingles. Is that something that staff has ever entertained?
That would be acceptable per the recommendation.
Because that would fulfill both sides of it. It would give the look of a shingle, but it would.
I grew up with a lot of tin roofs. They were considered to be an upgrade, not a downgrade. And I think they still are. The initial cost is greater than.
I would agree. You know, the lifespan of a standing seam metal roof definitely would outweigh the lifespan of an architectural shingled roof. And also something else worth considering too, given everything that's happened with the insurance companies in Florida in these last, year, 2 years. I'm not a homeowner, so I can't speak on that yet, but.
They'll give you 30 years for a metal roof versus now it's 12, 15. They're looking at you. You either have to re-inspect it to make sure it has life on it, which is they just legislated that, I think, this last year with that, because I had to do it.
Exactly.
I had to, and I'll be honest, I got one of my coworkers to inspect it as another licensed architect, so I didn't have to pay someone. But it's an undue stress upon everyone, because a shingle roof will actually last longer than 12, 15 years, but a metal roof even longer. So I totally get the maintenance side of that. I'd love to switch my home at some point to a metal roof as well, so.
I have a question for Emily. I know there were, in a previous case, we had something about a different style of metal that's not approved versus a style that's approved. Where does this one fit?
If the committee approves a standing seam metal roof for this project, it would have to be the flat panel standing seam. So we talked about roofing manufacturers are creating a striated panel. So there's striations in between the standing seam or the V crimps. So when you look at the profile, there is actual ribbing in between those seams.
It's kind of like what they do on like a Campbell's soup can. If it's not completely flat, they put some little bits of ribbing in it to make it more rigid. Because otherwise you get the guidelines talk about it if you get oil canning when it's flat. Is what happens. It heats up and all that, and it starts to get wavy.
Yeah, and we want the oil canning.
We want that. And it's like, I actually don't have any problems with it ever, and it's weird because most people don't, but apparently the manufacturers have gotten complaints from people about that, so they make you sign usually something that says, we're okay with this to even order it.
So what is the correct one to use?
Just the flat panel.
The flat panel, okay.
Standing seam or 5V crump.
So it would be a flat panel, standing seam, metal roofing? Okay.
Yes, yep.
Okay. Let's.
I'd like to make a motion. I move that
We're not quite there yet. We're going to end the public, do you have another question?
I do, but
Okay.
I'll wait until we get to the board discussion.
Okay. Going to end the public portion and move into the committee discussion portion. Go ahead.
Emily, I just want to be clear, this project type is listed as a demolition? I know that was probably the original application.
That was the original application.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
No, this is a major rehabilitation.
All right.
Okay.
And you're Gary Hyde?
No, sir. My name is Jordan Apples. I'm representing Gary Hyde.
Okay, okay.
And then, go ahead.
Back to you.
Okay, I move that we approve with number 1 of the staff recommendations.
And then, you're just to clarify your motion, number 1, but then are you going to modify staff's recommendation for number 2?
So removal of number 2?
Or are you just asking to remove that requirement?
Well, in other words, my motion would say that number 2 is not required.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify
Yeah.
if you were trying to modify what number 2 was in staff's recommendation.
No, just to ignore number 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, and you're fine with the first recommendation?
I'd have to see it one more time just to verify.
Just the straight eaves versus the
Pork chop.
pork chop.
Yes, that's correct. I'm okay with that. It's not feasible anyways because we're not going to be utilizing soffit fascia. We're going to utilize exposed rafter tails, so it's not feasible anyway. So yes, sir.
Excellent. Exposed rafter tails are always
Yeah, that's even
awesome.
better.
Yeah, we've done it before and it's always turned out nice. So
So we have a motion to approve using the first recommendation, canceling the second recommendation.
Do we have a second to the motion?
Not yet, because I have a question.
Usually
that-
comes after you get a second for the motion, then
Oh,
you discuss.
okay, do we have
So
a
I'll
second?
second the motion.
And now can we discuss?
Now you can discuss.
So then my discussion question would be in regard to, if they're using the standing seam metal roofing, do we need to require that it is the flat standing seam?
That detail doesn't need to be required by the committee because staff will ensure that the Florida Project Approval Code meets that requirement.
And it is on their documents already, so it'll be essentially at this point approving their documents that they submitted, but removing the request that it be shingles.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, or actually myself, approve. Chris Olson,
For?
Lynn Dennis,
For the motion.
Landis Fleming,
4.
Natalie Oldenkamp, and Michael Porter.
4.
Okay, and you are approved.
thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan.
There is no other business. Anybody have a motion to adjourn?
Before you adjourn, if I could just take a moment, I'd like to introduce, our office has a new attorney. His name's Alex Landbeck.
There you go.
We're very happy to have him, and he will be serving as the Historic Preservation Board's and Design Review Committee's new attorney. So he's here today to observe, but
So we get to haze him next month?
We'll see if he still wants to after today.
it's a pretty good board here, and they're a lot of fun too, so.
I was just gonna say, we have the standard of if it's not fun, we're not here. So do we have a motion to adjourn then?
Move for adjournment.
And a second?
Second that?
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We'll let you go then. And we